Right. Good afternoon, everybody. I think there is about a dozen or so people that we're expecting for this session, so we'll get started in just a moment or so. Thank you for those of you that got here on time. My name is Chase Berman. I'm FutureFeed Success Manager, and I'll be giving today's training session. We'll be going through about the first half of the platform, and I'll be making you aware of the initial getting started resources and taking a detailed dive into a lot of the different features that we want to make everybody aware of for really their initial journey in using FutureFeed. I look forward to today's session, and we'll just get started in about another minute or so and let the others come in. This session is being recorded, so later this afternoon, once everything concludes, I expect to get an email from Zoom, and that will provide you a link to the recording. If there are any issues with accessing it, please reach out to me or email support@futurefeed.co, and we'll be happy to get you a different version of the link. All right, while we still give others another moment or so to pop in, I'll just get my screen shared and everything up and running, and we'll be able to hit the ground running. We'll just wait another about 10, 15 seconds or so, and then we can get started. But I hope everybody is having a good day so far. I do have a special introduction to make. The newest member of the FutureFeed team. It's Amy Williams. Hi, Amy. I hope you're doing well. Really
Thanks, you too, Chase. Nice to see you, everyone.
Amy is our new VP of Compliance and Education. Really excited to have you be a part of the team and bring your wonderful years of experience to FutureFeed and everybody that's using the platform.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Chase.
Of course. All right, so I think there are others that'll come a little bit later on. It's fine if they hop in a little bit late. But we will, I guess, officially get this training session underway. So this is training 1 for end users. We're going to go through the start section, people, tools, and documents, and we'll hit on the information on this initial page, this compliance dashboard. And so this will take you through, again, like the first half of the platform. And after this, I'd recommend for next week's training for training 2 for end users. After you spend a little bit of time implementing the things that we'll go over today, and that's when I would recommend registering and attending the next training session. That'll take you through pretty much everything within the platform. If those 2 sessions aren't enough and you'd like to continue to go through training with us, you're able to register for as many sessions in the future as you would like. There's never an additional cost or anything like that for that. You're also welcome to reach out to our support team at any time. Likewise, with reaching out to myself, Amy, or anybody else in the team. If you'd like to schedule some like one-on-one independent time with us as well, you're certainly welcome to do so. Right, so we are at the point where you've recently purchased FutureFeed. You may have begun entering some data in the platform. If so, fantastic. But we're going to get started with some initial information just about understanding what the data is that you're looking at here, and some really important resources that we baked into the platform that's meant to really guide users throughout their various processes of using the platform, especially for entering data. And so I'll actually go to this start page, and I'd like to point out this getting started icon. So we had created earlier this year a user guide for FutureFeed. We've baked that into, all the sections throughout the platform. So when you're in the different stops on your subway map, it's in the top middle part of the screen. You'll just pay attention to this getting started icon and click on it, and you'll be able to have a lot of information that'll be really valuable to just understanding what the different sections are referring to, how to understand the information, really why the information you're looking at matters, and actually how to go about entering that data within FutureFeed. For some of these sections, we've actually incorporated information for why this information and data would actually be valuable to the assessor. So anybody that's a part of a C3PAO. FutureFeed will take you through your entire compliance management journey. So going through your initial gap assessment, creating the list of all of your documents, managing them, tools and services, your users, etc., and setting you up for actually a really expedited process for the C3PAO assessment, and then the continued management of all this information over time. This is ideally not something that's just going to be done once. FutureFeed will help everybody within your organization, the people really using the platform, be able to have a more expedited approach to executing the compliance management requirements over time. But that's really coming down to having this become a part of your everyday operations, cybersecurity culture, however you'd like to phrase that. But FutureFeed is here to sort of be like your best friend for compliance management and ensuring that all of your information is up to date and it's continuously so, even past when ideally you achieve CMMC certification. But we'll go back to the dashboards page here. I just want to take a brief pause to indicate that there are many of you here. I absolutely and always welcome collaboration during these sessions. So as I'm going through different sections of FutureFeed, if you have a question, you can feel free to unmute your mic and ask away. It's not rude at all to like just interject. You're not interrupting me or anything. The more questions that are asked, actually everybody would probably benefit from them as well. You're also welcome to add your questions into the chat section as well if you'd like. We've touched on the Getting Started guide. That will be a fantastic resource to utilize throughout any section in the platform that you're in. I want to describe what we're looking at here. On the top middle part of your screen, this is your subway map. You can think of it as like a recommended way of going through entering data in FutureFeed, but you don't necessarily strictly need to go left to right. The kickoff engagement or your initial session in FutureFeed, I do recommend filling out information in the start section and then adding your users. But if you're ready to go through your gap assessment, or maybe you've done so in the past, you have a previous version of a past SSP, you can go into assess and then begin filling out everything related to the objective statuses, adding objective statements, and then adding your documents and tools, connecting to controls. And I'll touch on what all of that means as we go through the different components of this training session. FutureFeed has a lot of features, and it's very flexible for how you can decide to utilize them. We don't have a strict way of using the platform. It's up to your organization to determine what workflows and implementation approaches work best for how your organization operates. We're also happy to provide any guidance or future support for what we would ideally recommend that you would do. But it just comes down to what you're trying to accomplish. So this compliance dashboard page, it is showing you the information at a high level to really summarize how far along your organization is as of today, like literally right now, for everything related to your assessment or your gap assessment. It's really meant to illustrate how far along you are in relation to addressing all the different objectives for the 110 controls for CMC level 2. If your organization has only purchased FutureFeed Core, that's our base plan for FutureFeed. It comes with all of our available features, but only the level 1 controls. We're currently looking at the level 2 view. So CMC level 2 and NIST 800-171 revision 2, they're merged together. And likewise with level 1 to where it applies to 800-171 as well. The data you enter in the level 2 framework view that will automatically carry back over into the level 1 view and vice versa. So whatever your organization is trying to accomplish by the framework, recommend just operating in one or the other, and it'll cross over. So with the other sections on the compliance dashboard, there's compliance, assessment prep center, team's responsibilities, individual responsibilities. I won't dive into these just yet, but I do want to emphasize that this is the primary way for anybody within your organization that's using FutureFeed to have direct visibility into who is accountable and associated to different items throughout the platform. That could be something like being the accountable person for a certain tool or a service, a document, even for control, POEM items, projects, etc. You can assign tasks to different users, and you're able to view all of that within this page for the individual responsibilities view. In this case, we're in sample company. It's one of our demo accounts. I'm happy to provide anybody access to this if you would like to. And you'd have it for like a long-term use for FutureFeed as well, in case you'd like it as your own training ground. But the RACI model is something that we incorporate throughout FutureFeed. This is one of the primary ways that you can actually document and connect the association's responsibilities for who is actually going to be doing what and what kind of level of work they're going to be doing related to whatever the item is that the RACI model is a part of. That will apply to any tools and services, these inventory items that you'll be creating within the platform. Likewise with the documents, and if you're managing them as live documents, be able to use the RACI model associations there. Likewise with any of the controls and POEM items as well, as I had stated about a minute ago. So as you're going through FutureFeed, once you're past adding the different people, the users, the people are the users, then associating roles to their profiles, creating teams, can then spend some time adding the different tools and services that your organization is using to operate. Likewise with incorporating, your documents into FutureFeed as well. We recommend utilizing the live documentation editor so you can manage this information and keep it up to date all within one environment, meaning your FutureFeed tenant. It's a great way to consolidate all the information so you always have everything at your disposal, and it's actually much more simple to find everything that you're looking for. And so as you're adding this information, you have the ability to connect users and define different types of associations through the RACI model that you would see an example like this if you've gone through maybe a couple dozen items or so. You are able to add and create tasks and assign them to users. These are directly associated to the documents and tools and services items that you're going to be creating in these two sections. You do have the ability to create recurring tasks as well. So for those processes that need to be continuously repeated over time, and you'll actually need to provide new forms of evidence, creating tasks and completing them, assigning them to users is the primary way to go about that in FutureFeed. You're also able to see a dropdown or a page view for the poem items that you're associated to for whatever component of the RACI model that that's a part of. To view this at a higher level, more from like that team-wide perspective, this would be really valuable for like IT managers or those that are really in charge or accountable of a organizational unit or team of people within your organization. Similar to the individual responsibilities page, you're now just looking at a very similar thing for all the different users. So you can see the number of poem items, tasks, and items for that the RACI model is applied to for their profiles here. Simply see the individual responsibilities page for another user, click on them, and you'll be brought to their view. It's a great way to have immediate visualization into everything that everybody is assigned to. But we'll take a step back. For everything that you're looking at here, we already did touch on the fact that when you're going through the gap assessment or in this assess section, depending on how you're updating the poem items met or not met, that's what's going to create more coloration to this chart and have it be more completed over time. It's giving you a sense of how far along each of the different domains. So for all of the controls that are part of these family groups, everything that's being addressed for them, or at least documented within FutureFeed. SPRS score visibility is really important to us, as we hope it is to you as well. So on this page, you're able to view that in larger bold letters, or sorry, not numbers here on the left side. Likewise, at any section you're in within FutureFeed, you can see the SPRS score on the top right. Now for the poem items that you'll be creating, right below the SPRS score here on the left side of the chart, you're able to see the last date a poem item is set to be completed by. Now, if this does refer to an assessment objective, that's going to give your organization a sense by, okay, September 30th, 2026, we're going to have a 110 SPRS score, but you'll need to make sure that you have the proper implementation statements or objective statements. Likewise, with the associated evidence to really justify that you do have everything you need to actually pass your assessment. Let's just say if assessor were to come in and view this information, or you might go through a mock assessment before you engage with the C3PAO. Now, for any service providers or third parties that you're utilizing, they may inherit responsibilities for the objectives, some, maybe many, that can come down to a couple different things, either partially or fully inherited objectives. Now, they would probably and hopefully have a CRM to provide you. You can add that in FutureFeed, and we'll walk through how to add documents like that in the platform. But when you're able to associate the inheritance at the objective level, that's what the information you're seeing here on the right side of this chart from a percentage and numerical perspective. Now, for other types of visibility for what's happening at the family control level, we're able to see a different breakdown of what's happening in this chart above, but from a percentage perspective. So 56% for configuration management. What does this actually mean? It'd be really great to have visibility into the objectives. So simply click on any of those boxes. You'll see all the controls that are a part of that family or domain. It's sort of interchangeable words. I'll probably go back and forth on that. So just wanted to clarify that as we're just getting started. And you're able to click on any of those controls. You'll see a breakdown of all the different objectives. Green means the objective has been marked as met, and red means it's been marked as not met. Now, you do have the ability to jump straight into this view for the control in the assess section or the live SSP. That actually brings me to a really big point for how FutureFeed will help expedite a lot of the information that, of course, you'll enter into the platform, but the really essential documents you'll need later on. That comes down to the SSP report. FutureFeed will automate your SSP for you, aside from just a small amount of details referring to like user devices counts and end of life counts. But everything that you're entering throughout these different sections, especially when you see an asterisk or something is indicating that it's being required, that will be a part of being incorporated into your SSP. And we will create the structure for you. So ideally, when you're going to go through the assessment with the C3PAO in the future, you're going to be able to provide them with an SSP and a structure that they will have everything that they need at their fingertips. So that'll result in less questions that they would ideally need to ask otherwise. Actually have the assessment, happen and occur and be finished at a faster pace. I think the fastest assessment that's ever happened in FutureFeed, it was 7 hours and 56 minutes. There have been a couple others that have happened in under 1 day, but from the feedback we've gotten recently, or at least over the last few months, it's been about 3 to 5 days as opposed to like the industry average of 6 to 7. The C3PAOs really benefit from the information they get from FutureFeed. You actually do have the ability to give them assessor access into your tenant if you would like to. That just means read-only access to this compliance dashboard page and the live SSP. All right, so we've talked about a lot of things at a high level, overall functions and long-term benefit of the platform. I don't want to give you like the sales pitch here because we're in the training for this. I do want to take a brief pause and open the floor to any questions about the stuff that we've discussed so far, or if there's anything anybody would like me to touch on in a little bit more detail. Also gives me a second to take a sip of coffee. And if you would like to ask a question, you're welcome to unmute your mic and ask away, or you can simply just add your question in the chat. I'll be sure to look for that as we're going through this. All right, so for the getting started process in FutureFeed, we would recommend going through the start section, and then moving into people. Give me 1 second. I've got a little something in my throat. All right, hopefully that stops whatever it's doing. But for the start section, this is high-level information really describing who your organization is. So a lot of this information, there's not a lot to enter in these sections, but we'll break it down into these like subcategories of the headers here right below the subway map. So for corporate data, some of this will already be populated when we go through the onboarding for your tenant. But just be sure to look out for the green information icons or blue information icons. We're trying to give you a sense of how to better understand the different features or what this data is actually referring to. But the blue information icons, which are not on this particular page, it's actually giving you a sense of why what you're looking at matters. So those two different types of like educational resources, it's meant to directly enhance and also really just complement what the Getting Started guide is articulating. There's a lot of information within some of these sections, so I do recommend just taking time initially to read through this. It's only meant to benefit everybody that's using the platform, but especially in the early stages of getting started. For the location section, this is where you're able to create place card holders for where the information within your system is being stored, whether it's like a corporate headquarters location, a physical or electronic data location. You're able to create as many of these cards as you would like, and this is an example of what one of those items looks like. Welcome to add any description or compliance notes that's related to this data location. And I'd like to point out on the right side of this rating. This is one of the optional features within FutureFeed, where if you decide not to take advantage of it, it's not going to hurt you in relation to like SPRS score accuracy or anything related to the assessment. But FutureFeed is here to do more than just help your organization prepare for and go through long-term compliance management. We're trying to provide everybody within your organization, but especially the executives, maybe like your CIO, with insight to what are the ongoing costs, all the tools and services you're using. Are the different things that you are utilizing actually suitable for what your organization is trying to accomplish? How's the overall experience with this? Whether it's a data location or in particular, or really specifically a different tool or service, you're able to add these different ratings here if you'd like, and it's completely subjective to how your organization would determine like the 1 to 5 ratings. I do want to point out the Connect, Compliance, Task Assignments, and Evidence tabs here. We're going to get into those in much more detail when we get into the Tools and Documents section. the ability for you to tag the information to the controls it's relevant to, which will automatically populate that data within the tag controls in your SSP. Task assignments, this is where you can create the tasks, recurring tasks, assign them to users. When you complete them, that is going to create a piece of evidence that's specifically related to the item that you're associating the task to. It's a great way for in your SSP, after the assessor is going through all the objective statements and they can see all the ways that you're saying that the stuff has been implemented, they're going to need to validate that. So if they just have a whole list of all the different files or pieces of evidence that you have, it's not really a great way to provide them with something that could otherwise be a lot more effective for their visibility. So that's why having the evidence associated to these items in particular and tagging them to controls is going to provide one of the most powerful pieces of automation FutureFeed has. Even when we add more automated capabilities in the future or enhancements like AI documentation review, that'll be coming soon. I think in about a couple of weeks or maybe a month or so. I'd bank one sometime in November. There's a lot that's going to be enhanced in FutureFeed in the future, but focusing on the now, there's a lot that can help you prepare for everything you're looking to accomplish now or in the next several months, but especially for the long term. That is directly enhanced through this concept that I just talked about, the automation of the tagging, the task assignments, and then creating the evidence. And we'll go through the detailed approach of how to actually implement that when we get into one of these two sections. I'd like to switch over to the scope section for a moment. So collaboration is something that we also take to heart, and FutureFeed won't be having these discussions with you, but it's meant to enable anybody or any team within an organization, or if it's possibly just yourself that's managing this for your company, you're able to actually go into this section and define what kind of scope your organization will have for its assessment, or ideally what the SSP is articulating. A couple of different options you can select from, whether it's enterprise-wide, a specific organizational unit, or a program enclave. And I do want to note the two sections right below this for describing the system boundary and then articulating what the overall function or purpose of the system is. If you would like to actually incorporate an image of your system boundary, that actually came up in a request about like 8 or 9 days ago or so. They were looking to actually have this image appear in their SSP. The way you can do that in FutureFeed is just by simply pasting the image of your system boundary in this section on the right, and that should carry over into your SSP and actually have the image appear. You can also add it as a document and then just add an attachment or just create it or paste it in the live document. Either way, that's how you'll be able to get that to appear in the SSP. But if you want the actual image to be visualized in the SSP report, paste that in here. On the contract side, so you will not be placing your contracts or anything that has anything to do with CUI in FutureFeed, but you do have the ability to add information that just briefly illustrates what your contracts are, any cage codes that are associated to your organization as well. To do so, you can add as many cage codes or contract items as you would like. Simply click the blue plus icon for the new cage code, add the code, and then you have the ability to add an optional description if you would like. For the contracts, to do so, simply click the new contract icon, add the information that you would like to. The title will be required, everything else is optional. This is actually a really neat way for you to associate this contract to either any of the DFARS clauses or anything related to FAR or ITAR or EAR. General straightforward features here, but you're setting up your organization for really just describing and defining who you are at a high level, having that scoping conversation and entering just initial information about your contracts for team-wide visibility. For the data inventory section, so as you're adding different tools and services within FutureFeed, you'll have the ability to associate them or define it as an asset category, whether it's related to FCI or CUI, or any type of sensitive data or non-CUI commercially sensitive, to be more specific. Go back to the FCI page for a moment. There actually is a visual here, which is meant to just give you a sense of how you can understand really what your information is, if it's FCI or if it's CUI. Ideally, if it's CUI, it's already labeled as such. We do recommend just reading through that if you'd like to benefit from that resource as well. So I'll describe what the information is that we're looking at here. So we see that there's 5 tools and services used to store or transmit FCI. Any tool or service item that you create in this section that will appear here on this list. To simply get it to be a part of this count, click on this icon and just give this a second to load, and that will appear now in the section above, and you can see the 5 is now changed to 6. So that's the simple way to associate your items or your different tools and services, something that is related to storing or transmitting FCI. For CUI, all of these different CUI types, whether it's for CUI basic or CUI specified, all of these are hyperlinked to the CUI registry at the NARA website. So this is a great way for you to actually learn more about the information your organization may already be processing, transmitting, or storing. Maybe you'll be receiving that in the future and you're trying to prepare for that. The numbered icons and the other, I guess this is like a wrench or a tool that you're seeing here. This is indicating the items for the tools and services that are defined for the asset category of CUI asset, or it is a CUI asset. Now, you're able to check these boxes if you know that you do have something that is related to any of these items, but to get, I guess, the difference between your seeing of this checkbox and also like this one for the particular tool that's associated, you're going to be able to go into this tool section, and I'll pop into here for a moment so I can just give you a sense of everything that I'm describing here. And you go into the data inventory section. You see a list of all your active tools and services. The asset category section is what you're going to want to change to CUI assets. And you'll be able to have the CUI icon or this icon become clickable as opposed to anything that is not categorized as a CUI asset. Click on this, and the pop-up of the page that we were seeing before is now going to appear. So this is where you can make the direct associations for these items, I guess, for the different types of CUI related to the particular tool or service that you've selected. And this is one of the examples of where that blue information icon does appear. I just wanted to point that out because we didn't see that earlier. And we'll spend a lot more time in tools and documents shortly. For the settings section, there's a lot of power in this page, and I do recommend taking advantage of the features. So if you'd like to send POEM items or POEM projects to a particular support email or ticketing system email, you are able to simply add that email here. So I can add support@futurefeed.co. I'm not going to do that in here because we would end up creating a lot of tickets for ourselves. That would honestly just be like dummy data. You're able to add the information here, and you can see some examples of what the email would look like in case this, I guess, in reference to the POEM item in particular. Then also for a POEM project, which will encapsulate multiple POEM items. A neat trick to this is if you don't want to send those emails to like your general support email or something like integrating with ServiceNow, you can send this to a team member of yours directly just by adding their email here. I haven't seen it done often. It just depends what organizations want to do. I don't have access, or I will not have access to anybody's tenant, but I've not been given any feedback or comments about that they've actually taken advantage of that. But it is a neat thing that you can do here in case you'd like to send those emails directly to somebody instead of a general support system. When you're identifying gaps, ideally within the different objectives for the 110 controls, if level 2 is what you're trying to accomplish, or you know that some documents you have still need some work done to them, or there's a problem with a tool or service, you can create POEM items for these things. You can set the default due date, and this is for a quarterly basis. So whenever you create a new POEM item, the default due date in this case will appear 2 quarters out, and that will expand all the way up to 2 years, so 8 quarters. And it's up to you however you'd like to set this, and you can change it at any time. The organizational scale, this is impact, effort, and cost. With any POEM item that you create, you have the ability to utilize another optional feature. Personally, I see this as being a very powerful one as well, and I highly recommend taking advantage of it. This will directly enhance or give you the ability to enhance the approach you're taking to the remediation planning, the structural build out to your projects, and really defining individual POEM items and also the projects based on their impact, effort, and cost. So how impactful is something going to be, or a certain project or a task, to what your organization is trying to accomplish, focusing on the now and envisioning what you're trying to accomplish in the future. The effort, it's really the amount of time that's being spent on these different items, and then the overall cost for what it's going to take to accomplish whatever the particular item is, or this particular POEM item or project. These ratings are subjective to how your organization would like to define them. So if you represent a larger organization, The symbol for one may actually be $10,000 and then $1 million for something that's very expensive, or $10 million. Smaller organizations might be lesser values, but it's up to you for how you'd like to determine these values, and then you'll be able to utilize them to your future benefit going forward. All right, we will, staying conscious of time, we're about halfway through, so we're making good pace here. Do you want to take a brief pause? Are there any questions about anything related to the start section that we just walked through? All right, actually, I do see one chat came in about 12 minutes ago. So sorry, Jonathan, for missing that. Just read that. So what happens if you don't mark objectives as partially inherited, assuming there is a third party like a service that performs background checks, for example, PS 3.9.1. So if you don't mark objectives as partially inherited, but there is a service provider that is going to be performing a service that could actually inherit some of that. Actually, I will, for this example or this question, I will jump into that particular control. Thank you for providing that, and I'll talk through that as well. So this is coming down to how you want your information to be illustrated within FutureFeed. All of this, and then try to envision this as the benefit to the assessor, but also for your entire organization's understanding for how all of these different things are being addressed. You can document that in FutureFeed. So for a particular objective, have the ability to add your objective statement. It's describing how the objective is actually being implemented, just this specific objective, and the assessors will benefit from that because they'll have that breakdown for each individual objective for every control. So let me just go back to the question for a second to stay on topic. If you don't mark objectives as partially inherited, assuming there is a third party like a service that performs background checks, for example. So if you're not going to be marking it as partially inherited like this, but inheritance actually does apply, one, make sure that the inheritance is marked. But in the event that it is not, let me just think about this for a moment, because I can't really see a scenario where you wouldn't mark it as partially or fully inherited. So my guess manager to this is make sure that you actually do mark it as inheritance when inheritance does apply. Make sure you have the CRM from that third party, whatever the service provider is, incorporate that into FutureFeed, and that'll give you the ability to associate or connect that CRM and the particular tool or service that's inheriting the responsibility or partially inheriting the responsibility for the objective. I'll walk through how you can create that connection in a minute. But Jonathan, I feel like I might not have answered your question entirely. Is there anything else that you'd like me to touch on regarding that? If you'd like to unmute yourself so we can sort of collaborate on this now, I'm happy to do so.
Chase, I don't know whether you can hear me, but got a quick question.
Sure.
It's a little bit broader. So the part that you showed where, contracts could be uploaded, but you said you shouldn't. But I was wondering, do you have any capability in mind where you can maybe through AI review the contract and see based on all the clauses it references, are we in compliance or not with whatever we are doing as far as this, our cybersecurity posture and everything else that we put into your website? Is there a way to evaluate that and say, hey, these are the gaps and these are the things that you guys need to do?
So if I understood your question correctly, you're looking to see for the different high-level information about your contracts that you're entering into FutureFeed, if the platform would then be able to give you a sense of how far along your organization is in your compliance journey, or specifically indicating the stuff you should be prioritizing. Is that correct, or is that a little bit off?
Yeah, mostly correct. Like the problem we have is that the government contracts are very detailed with, millions of clauses that refer to other millions of clauses, and it's almost impossible to figure out, are we in compliance or not for everything specifically related to cybersecurity and the services that you provide. Is there a way to identify gaps between what we have done so far and what we need to do based on the contract? Yeah.
So that is done in the assess section.
Okay.
You're going through your gap assessment. You'll be able to mark the objectives as met or not met. FutureFeed will not tell you what you haven't done already. So we're just the platform in this essence for how you'll be going through your compliance journey, engaging with the service provider. They will be able to review and analyze all your information you have. and actually go through the gap assessment with you if you'd like, that they would be able to be your primary resource, or any service provider out there that's certified to do this work. They would be able to give you that true and confident sense of what you've already accomplished so far and where your gaps are. But that all of that would be documented and visible within FutureFeed through how you're marking the objectives as met or not met, adding different documents and tools. But what our team and also our platform is capable of, it doesn't reach that far from like a service providing perspective. And we're ideally just a platform in this instance for how organizations are utilizing FutureFeed. Does that make sense, or is there anything I might have missed for your question?
No, that's good. Thanks, Chase. Yeah, no, that should be very useful. So we'll look forward to seeing how it all works out. Thank you.
And in the event you would ever like to become more aware of the organizations or the service providers we have relationships with, they're our partners, be happy to provide recommendations to you. You can also go to our marketplace and view that information as well.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Of course. All right. All right, I want to go back to Jonathan's question because I see he added another comment in the chat. It's more specifically, will you fail the assessment if you don't mark them as inherited? Do assessors care if it is marked in FutureFeed if the company has all the normal related documentation regarding the third party and other documents? So this goes a tiny bit beyond my reach of what I should really be like providing in form of like guidance to users. I can touch on some of this. But I think this is actually a great segue. Amy, if you would like to assist with this question, I absolutely open the floor
sure.
to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help. So I am just, let me turn my video back on. I am just coming off of leading an assessment team at Coal-Fired Federal. So that's where I was before coming to FutureFeed. And the answer is that the assessors are going to go through a 3-stage process. They're going to ask you for all of the evidence that you have relative to the CMMC assessment, and then the assessors are going to spend about a week reviewing the documentation that you give them, and then they're going to make their own notes, and their notes are going to be related to this appears to be met, this appears to be not met. And so everything that you can document in FutureFeed is going to help them understand your what we call story of compliance. This appears to be met because you've got this policy in place and this procedure. And if you have all that documented in FutureFeed, then it's really easy for the assessor to understand that. If it's not documented, so if you don't have, let's say that you have a control that is partially or even fully inherited by a third party that you have, and it's not documented in FutureFeed, the second step of the assessment is for the assessors to ask you questions. So you'll have a week of interviews, and they will chat with you about this particular control doesn't appear to be met. How are you meeting this control? And then you can demonstrate. And if you haven't marked something that is, let's say, partially or fully inherited, adequately so, then you can explain that during the week of interviews, but it'll go faster and easier if you do include it. So to your question, do people sometimes forget to document things as partially or fully inherited? Yes. Is that going to get you to a failing place? No, because the assessors are going to ask questions during the interviews to tease out whether or not the control is met. But again, telling the FutureFeed helps you tell a compelling story upfront so that the assessors have more confidence that your controls are trending towards met before they get to the interview stage. Does that make sense?
And Jonathan, if you'd like to either just like give us like the thumbs up or something in the chat, or okay, all right, wonderful. You said that. Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure.
So, Amy, thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we've got about 21 minutes left. I do want to just note, if we don't get through everything that was intended for the sessions, I love the conversation that's happening so far. I will be sending everybody a separate email with a copy of a past end user 1 training that will go through some of the other things in like the tools and documents section that we might not fully address. I want to make sure that we take full advantage of the time we have here today, but you also do have everything related to what we're supposed to ideally cover in this initial training session. So just in case we aren't able to get to everything, I'll be sending over that other recording as well. Right, so the people section. So aside from the start area, when we onboard your tenant, somebody is going to be listed as the admin user. That gives them the ability to add other users when necessary and also manage other users. There are several different types of users and access that you can provide them with to actually accessing FutureFeed. So to add a new user, and again, only the admin users have the ability to do this functionality. You can have an unlimited amount of users within your tenant and a limited amount of admin users. We don't price off of that. It's just the global FTE count or the full-time employee count of your organization. So add as many people in here as you would like and welcome all the collaboration possible. So you can either add an employee, third party, or assessor user. When you select either, just entering their first and last name, their email option for the phone. Then there's different types of access that you can give them. So the difference between a standard and admin user is just the fact that an admin user has the ability to manage other users. Both standard and admin users have the ability to go throughout any of the sections within FutureFeed, view, modify, edit data. So that's the difference between these two. There may be situations where somebody that's a part of your organization needs to appear somewhere on the SSP, but they don't actually need to do anything within FutureFeed. So in order to have that happen, you can simply create them as a user with no access. That'll give you the ability to associate a role to their profile and then connect them ideally through the RACI model to any of the items that they're related to. And if you're going to, like, later down the road, when you're going to go through your C3PAO engagement, you're able, or what we would recommend is giving the one and a couple of them, it's up to them and you, however many people you like to give access to, as the assessor user. So this will again give them read-only mode to the live SSP and the compliance dashboard page. They will not have the ability to edit any of the data, but it gives them a really great way to have a interactive experience with reviewing your assessment. So when they're going through the 3 different stages of the assessment itself, they'll be able to utilize your data to have a much more effective process. And if you would like to set like a time duration for the user's profile, there's plenty of different options here. If you know it's somebody there's always going to need to access FutureFeed, just set them to never. And you actually have the ability to set whatever your selection is for this particular new user as the default for new employee users. The same thing would apply for new third-party users or new assessor users. For roles. So this is, while we're in the beginning stages of FutureFeed, this is also another really powerful section. We do recommend that you associate every user to at least one role. Users can have multiple roles, but there is a lot of different moving parts to everything that's going to be like visible and documented in FutureFeed, but especially for who is actually doing what. That's coming down to ideally the roles that they're having within their organization or for their organization, even for a third party. So you can add as many additional roles as you would like. There are default roles. If any of these don't apply, simply just click this power icon, mark it not applicable, and add a justification reason as to why. So when I showed everybody earlier on this individual responsibilities page for like my user profile, there's a good amount of items that I'm associated to. Now, this is primarily through the associations of my role that I have within Sample Company or this demo account. I'm actually listed as 2 roles. So I have a lot of things that have been assigned to me because I'm the CIO and the CRO for Sample Company. It would be a shame if this information got lost in transition of my offboarding, and then when you're going to be onboarding somebody to fill in my replacement for either or both of the roles. So what we would recommend is, instead of removing the particular user that's being offboarded first before anything else is done, add the new user that's going to assume their different responsibilities through the role that this other user had, and then make the switch in here simply by clicking on the person's name and then selecting the user that's relevant for the change. That will by default take the user out of that role, but it's going to automatically carry over all the items associated to the particular role to the new user's profile. So they go to their individual responsibilities page or that dashboard, and they're able to see the items there. There's no need to go through a manual process, and especially possibly the worry or stress of making sure that everything is carried over during this process for an organization. So ideally, roles and their inherited responsibilities will be changing much less than the people filling those roles. For some organizations that might not apply, but either way, we wanted to take that concept into account here and ensure that we provided a very efficient and effective way for users to ensure that this information is not lost during this transitional period. For the team section, very similar to how you can add users and roles, but you can group those items into teams. Now, if you are representing like a larger-ish organization and you have multiple teams within your organization, or if you're a little smaller, but you still have at least some of the teams that we're looking at here, FutureFeed will give you a way to create default teams that are already pre-tagged to controls, as we're seeing here on the right side. This is sort of like a cheat sheet to see which teams you can create, even if you're not going to use the default ones that you can populate here, but identifying what controls that they're associated to. For the RACI component of all the controls, that's representing the interview phase of the assessment that the C3PAO will conduct. They're going to want to know the people and also the teams that are either responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed for whatever is relating to the control. It's a great way to expedite that process here. Now, for creating teams, you can populate them through that icon that we just brought up. But if you'd like to create one from scratch, simply enter the team name, you can add an optional description. You may get to the point where you have all these teams here, but how do you get the people and also the roles in here? How do you associate or assign a team leader? So these two different sections here on the middle and left side of this very large pop-up icon, it's all of the roles that you've created, and you'll be able to see in some parentheses if there is a user associated to them, then also the individual people separated by their user type, whether they're an employee or a third party or an assessor. So you simply just click the plus icon to get these items to appear. And to get the team leader, you will need to have selected at least one particular person from the list here you're seeing in the middle part of your screen. So I click on this dropdown, see that Creighton and Joe are the ones that are available to select. It's because they're the two individual people or the users that have been associated to this team. So that's how you can create, manage teams, modify the information over time. But it's a great way to associate individuals and also roles that people will be having within your organization directly associated to a particular team. And you can use the R on the RACI model, so responsible, and then also the C and the I for consulted and informed, to associate teams to different items if you would like to. For the accountable person, for the RACI model, you can only select one individual person. All right, so we've got 13 minutes left. We're going to keep things moving with the tools and services section, and then we'll jump into documents. I do want to reemphasize the importance behind the getting started guide, but especially now that you've moved into adding information for the tools and also documents into your FutureFeed tenant. Do recommend just going through and reading through any of the information that's in the getting started guide and any page of the platform that you're in. We'll touch on what all the information we're looking at is in here, and also how to add it and utilize the platform for it as well. So there's a couple different ways that you'll be able to view the lists of tools and services within these different sections. So either in tools and services, specific assets, or the list of vendors that you can create. It's going to start with the active tools and services, and if any are in the pending status, you're able to then see them drop down below here in this sample company. There's none listed as that. We already did touch on how to, I guess, choose the asset category, but you're also able to create, illustrate more of a better understanding for what this particular tool and service is representing, like what's it actually doing for your organization. So you can define like the type of tool or service that this is, whether it's on-prem, online, or it's through a service provider. You do have the ability just to see here in this particular overview page if there's a CRM associated to the item, how many controls it's connected to, what's the ROI for this. That comes through a result of implementing the ratings or the optional ratings for the particular item. How many end users and privileged users are associated to the particular tool and service. Now, to actually edit this information as well, I would recommend doing so in the inventory item card itself. You can add more information to this as well. So similar to the data locations, you can add a description and compliance notes for a tool or service. But I do want to spend a moment or so walking you through how you can complete this process of documenting a CRM associating that to the particular service or tool or service, and then also associating the vendor as well. So I'll take a step back from this and start from the CRM's area. So in the document section. So in the reference documents area, we have 4 different categories for the documents here, and likewise with some others in working docs. You have the ability to add any CRMs that your organization has been given by cloud service providers or third parties. To simply add them, click on this plus icon. You're just going to add the name of the CRM. But you want to make sure that this is actually here. And it'd be best to have the document visible within FutureFeed. So we would recommend adding it as a live document. So you're just simply going to copy and paste it. Then you can edit or modify it over time, especially as you're getting like an updated version in the future. You can also add it as an attachment. It just depends on how you'd like to view and work with the data that's within this inventory item card. The downside to adding attachments as opposed to utilizing the live documentation feature is these documents are probably going to be updated over time, especially for the different policies and procedures you have. It's not related to CRMs, but that means you're going to need to continuously remember to add the latest version of that document once it's updated outside of FutureFeed. So if you're storing these documents on SharePoint or OneDrive, it can become a lot of outside clutter and a little bit of confusion as to what is actually the most up-to-date version of that document. Could have 5 to 10 different versions of it over time, but you want to always ensure that the most up-to-date version of that document is going to be reflected, one, within FutureFeed, then also going to be referenced on your SSP, and also communicated and provided to the assessor if they ask for it. So that is why we would do recommend utilizing the live documentation editor. Now, touching back on the version history, and I'll conclude the point about associating the CRMs to the tool or service and the vendor. You're able, so think of this as an automatically saving Word document. FutureFeed will save any data you enter in here automatically. But what about the compliance review period you're going through for a document? You might make some minor, substantial, but just changes to the document and its information. You're going to create tasks. You want that up-to-date information to be reflected on the task document that's going to be created. So to ensure that you can, one, manage different versions of the document, but always have the most up-to-date information. Whenever you make a change to the document, click on this publish icon. We'll see that we just moved from version 1 to version 2 of this particular document to view the past versions that you've created. And this can expand all the way up to this. There's no limit to the amount of versions you can create, but you can see the dates and the times that you created these different versions and actually restore a previous version of the document if you want to. So that would replace the need to have 7 different files within your company's system that's representing the same thing, but 6 of them are outdated. You're able to have FutureFeed store all that for you in a much more beneficial way to view the information and ensure that you're looking at the right stuff. All right, so switching gears back to the CRM functionality, add the document here. Do recommend you need to have the document title. The RACI model will appear here for any of the documents, tools and services, controls, poem items, etc. At the minimum, we do recommend having somebody be listed as the accountable person for every item the RACI model appears on. The minimum, you're documenting that somebody is accountable for whatever the process is or the oversight or management for the particular the item or the information. So you'll have the CRM here. You're going to want to connect that or apply that to a particular tool or service. So you have the CRM, then you're going to go into the tool and service and find the item in this section, and then select from the CRMs that you have, and you can have multiple if you would like. Simply select them. And then if you've already created a listing for the vendor that's providing the CRM and the tool or service to you, you're able to then select them from this list as well. So we form this relationship here, but you're not yet able to then associate or indicate / illustrate the inheritance at the objective level. In order to do that, there's one final piece to this. I don't want to say puzzle. I don't want to make this a little bit more confusing, but it's the final piece to this really important function of the automation. And this all goes back to the purpose of tagging. You have the ability to tag any of these items to the controls they're relevant to. Different ways that you can identify the controls. As of today, FutureFeed won't give you a list of recommended controls that these items can apply to. There may come a time in the future when we'll provide that, but it's very difficult for a GRC to identify all of the different tools and services organizations can use, because it's going to vary throughout the thousands of organizations within the industry. So if you are able to know, I guess, what controls are relevant, you simply just identify them by searching some keywords, whether it's anything in the control name, the control description language, anything that's articulated in the objectives, and the guidance information in FutureFeed. So all that's visible at the control level. If you're able to select them, simply just click on them, or you can add them all at the same time. So we now know that this particular inventory item and its associated vendor and also the CRM, they're tagged to these 11 controls. We've now formed the relationship between this information. So the last piece we need to do for the inheritance is go to a particular objective and then select that item and then add the other information that you may need. If we go into the control, find the objective, click on it. Below the objective statement, you're going to see possibly a list of different tools and services and the associated CRM. Now, those that don't have a CRM associated, you won't be able to select it, but it also might not be tagged to the control. So ensure that the CRM is associated and the item is tagged to the control. That's what's going to give you the ability to select the item for the level of inheritance that's designated, whether it's partially or fully inherited. And you can have multiple items indicated for inheritance as well. When something is partially inherited, or if the objective is not going to be fully inherited, you do have the ability to add like a brief statement or so for the different tools and services indicating the shared responsibilities. You can discuss the split just by doing so in this box here that you can pop up. So that is how you can add a CRM into FutureFeed, associate that to the tool and service or tool or service that it's related to, and also associate the vendor to that item as well, tag it to the controls it's relevant to, and then you'll be able to indicate the inheritance at the objective level for the controls that is tagged to, if it applies. The output of that, so this is like a really, in my opinion, this is a really big concept that we're talking about because it goes much past just how you can do this for CRM and inheritance. But this concept of tagging, that's going to apply to the actual tasks and evidence that you'll create through completing those tasks. I'd like to show you how that actually creates the output in your SSP. So I'm not going to go through all the individual information here, but this does refer to the objectives, the poem items that's related to, and the objective statements as well. But remembering this concept of tagging, so connecting this information to the controls, and you want to see that in the SSP. That is why we'll just run with the assumption that you've done all the tagging. You're seeing all the different tools and services, specific devices, now your list of documents that are associated to this control. So now you're providing this information to the assessor so they can review your objectives. They see the implementation statements you've articulated. They're now going to want to move down to that examine and test components, or the stages 2 and 3 of your assessment. So actually, possibly, and they will be asking questions about this. Amy, you can correct me where I might be getting a little off speed on that. But they are going to want to know and actually see some of the documents on controls that they are actually going to need to validate to justify that you have these documents here, but are they actually being implemented? Are these up to date? Where's the evidence for them? So you click on this drop-down icon, click the wrong button, excuse me. Click this drop-down icon, and you're able to see all the individual pieces of evidence that's directly associated to, in this case, the access control policy, cybersecurity policy. It's a really condensed way for you to form a relationship between everything that is needed to justify and provide evidence for how a particular control is being met. And ideally, this will result in less questions being asked of your organization throughout the assessment. Questions probably will come up one way or the other, but you're doing the C3PAO a good service by having the information be structured in the way that FutureFeed provides the output for you. But you need to take advantage of the features that come up in these other sections. Okay, for the last minute that we have here, I just want to touch on one thing for the documents. We're not going to be able to get through everything, so I do apologize for not being able to get through everything that was intended for this session. So I will be following up with each of you to ensure that you get another copy of a past recent recording that will touch on everything that initially I'm going to touch on here, that goes into the rest of the details for how to go through utilizing the different features in the documents and tools section. If you do need to hop off at the top of the hour, you're welcome to do so. Because you attended this session, the recording will be sent to you later this afternoon. I'll just conclude this last point and then we will conclude the session for the day. You have the ability to utilize documentation templates that FutureFeed provides to you, 57 to be exact. It's meant to be a really good starting base for an organization, and it's certainly not everything an organization will need. All these documents will need to be implemented separately for your organization, but it's a good template basis that we want to provide complimentary to everybody. You're very welcome, Lawrence. I saw your chat there, but thank you very much for attending. Similar to what you can do with pre-populating teams and having them tag to controls, the same thing applies to documents here in FutureFeed. You can see that through the connected controls list down here. If you already have these documents, add them into FutureFeed, or you can populate these and then paste your information into that document instead of just using our generic templated version. But you're going to be creating these documents already tagged to controls, or you can use this as like another sort of cheat sheet for figuring out or identifying the controls that these different documents are related to. So it's about 24 lists, 1 plan, a couple dozen policies, and 1 procedure, and 3 worksheets. So it is definitely not everything an organization would need, but we wanted to provide all of our customers with at least substance to base off of, especially if they don't really have any of their documentation templates yet. If you do engage with the service provider, they may be providing the documentation templates for you and helping you implement them. So that's something you can take advantage of them or take advantage of with them if that's a part of the service they provide. There is also the ability to purchase an add-on documentation toolkit through a third-party vendor of ours called Compliance IT. If you'd like to learn more about these documentation templates, I think there's about 80 or low 90 count for the templates. That is meant to be a more robust set of documentation templates an organization can use and then implement. They also do have an implementation program that you can also purchase through them, or through us if you'd like to actually ensure that you're able to work with somebody from Compliance IT to implement the documents. I mean, it's going to happen in FutureFeed, but there's a lot of work that goes into the documentation management. You can reach out to me if you'd like to learn more about those templates, and I can connect you with somebody from Compliance IT for the next steps. And so that's how you can populate documentation templates in FutureFeed. We already did touch a little bit on how you can utilize the live documentation editor as opposed to just adding them as attachments. Right, we're 2 minutes over. There's like a really important thing here that I do want to touch on for a moment at a high level. Task assignments. For those of you that are still with me, thank you for your extra time. I do really appreciate it. So we've already covered tagging. It's really valuable. But now you're incorporating that tagging component to the different tasks that you can then assign to people, recurring tasks, but that will create the evidence that's directly associated to these items. So to create a task, you're able to simply add the name of the task. It's going to start with the name of the document or tool or service that it's associated to. Think of this as a notification that's going to be sent to the user the task is assigned to, and they will get an email notification from FutureFeed. The notes section is just general guidance or instructions you'd like to provide to them. I personally would recommend adding something in here so they're not sort of just left guessing about what this task is, and they might just message you and ask, what's this task all about? Add information in here. You will need to assign somebody to the task. I want to point out that you're seeing in bold letters above, in this case where it's saying not assigned, or maybe you're seeing my name here, it's the roles that are associated to the users. You're only able to assign a task to somebody if they have a role associated to their user profile. So that's another reason why we really recommend that every user that's like added in FutureFeed, they have a role connected to their profile. So we're able to select a user, set the due date for this. If it's a one-time task, you can simply proceed with submitting once you have the information in these other fields. To create recurring tasks, you can set either a daily all the way up to a yearly recurring cadence for how often you'd like this task to reoccur. That's going to help expedite the process of ensuring that your team or a particular user is notified that this recurring task is coming up again, so you can create a new form of evidence to continuously justify how this access control policy, for this example, is still being implemented. You're going to need continuous and newly up-to-date evidence, especially for your assessment. Yeah, that's all I'll touch on this for now, because I do want to stay conscious of time. You're able to review the information here, and then the recurrent summary is going to appear on the right. It's going to give you a sense of how often this task is going to reoccur, what day of the month that it's going to be, I guess, created on. And then also, if you'd like to end this the series of recurring tasks at some point in the future, then the due dates, that's going to indicate how many days the person has to complete this task after it's been completed. So for task assignments and also documentation review, we do recommend that you utilize this functionality here. But when you complete a task, I'll just go back to this for a moment and I'll take Mark's place. In this case, for this task, you'll be brought to this page when you click on the hyperlink in your email that'll take you into the actual task pertaining to the item. Let's say that you've gone through the whole process for this task. It's good to go and it's completed. I'm not going to switch myself to Mark for this. I'll just continue to walk through this example. Everything is done. You're going to mark the task as saved complete, add any notes if you would like. You can also implement your save signature or add it for the first time, and FutureFeed will save it. This is going to associate the person who completed the task, like their name, the date that it was done, and also their virtual signature to attest that this was done and validated. For documentation approval, something that's come up a lot over the last year or so, it's really questions about how you can document somebody's approval that this particular policy or procedure is good to go. So what we'd recommend is create a task, assign it to somebody, and then they're going to be able to sign off on this through completing the task. But what if there's multiple people that's a part of this process? So assign it to the person that's going to do the initial review. They can then reassign the task to somebody else who's ideally going to be the one giving the final approval. So the way I would do that is just select a different user and then select save in progress. The user is going to get an email notification. They've been reassigned this task, and they'll be able to come in and conclude the process. That is what's going to create the evidence whenever the task is completed, directly associated to the particular item. As long as the tagging has been done, you're not going to have to worry about ensuring that this information and the associated evidence will appear in the SSP for all the controls that it's related to. All right, catch my breath for a hot second, but that will conclude the training session for today. So later this afternoon, expect to get an email from Zoom that will provide a link to this training. If there are any issues accessing the recording, please reach out to support@futurefeed.co and we'll be happy to assist. I want to thank you all very much for your time today. It's a pleasure to speak with you, provide this training, and engage and have some collaboration as well. And Amy, thank you very much for your assistance as well. Really happy to have you a part of this team. And I'd say in the next week or so, spend some time implementing the stuff that we walked through today, and then register for training 2 for end users. That'll walk through the second half of the platform. And also be on the lookout for a separate email from me where I'll be sending everybody another copy of a past recording that really takes in everything that we didn't get through for the last 5 minutes or so of today's session. But thank you all very much today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Chase.
Of course. All right, bye, everyone.